All right, we're gonna get experimental today, um, and have our first caller guest, and we'll see how this goes. But let's kick this thing off. Welcome to Unmuzzled Chat. So we, in fact, are welcoming back Charmaine today, and my goodness, like. Once again, Charmaine, your feedback has been so appreciated and had led to a personal, like, we were sending so many voice clips, snips to each other this morning. It just got so ridiculous. It finally called, and we both were like, yeah, we both felt that. We both wanted to make that phone call, right?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Just tired.
Right. Doing that graveyard, I gotta tell you, man. Mm, we need to kick off your magnet sticker company so you have, say, the sleep schedule that works for
I
for
agree.
your body, right? And your
Yeah,
brain to function at its best.
and it's peak. Yes.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I guess I just had the realization too. We're probably going to be bleeding over into your sleepy time. So I'll try to stay aware of that. But once again, as we were communicating, like you just out the gate were extremely brave with me, shared even some things like I just love how you do genuinely wear your heart on your sleeve and you are unfiltered in that regard. And you shared some vulnerable things even about your life as we basically we're having a conversation as to how we're going to save the world, right? But it led into all this confusion in regards to, I don't know, uh, all this destructive ideology regarding sex and um, what people are identifying as. Just went down like kind of that rabbit hole, so to speak. But you opened up in your own life to where you've pretty much experimented with men and women, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, we could talk about it. And that's what was so awesome that you felt comfortable enough with me to kind of go there where, like, I'm not going to bite your head off. And I can't cast any stones because whether people view it up as sin or whatnot, I mean, we could really dive into that. But
Hmm.
I myself am a sinner. I myself have made mistakes. I myself have broken the law. And so it's just, it would be entirely hypocritical to come from a place of judgment. So I would really hope that, yeah, you and the listeners could grasp, like, here on a muzzle, like, it's not our place to judge. Are you kidding me? We never want to lose sight of an individual's walk and an individual's beliefs and give all the accreditation and validation and just open up the dialogue as to, wow, well, could we really touch on and get to the root of all this life? And is it leading to a higher quality of life individually and for our communities and society, or leading to more destructive? So there's just so much value to communicating with you in that regard because you just are so you're able, like, you're stronger than you're able, you have the communication, like you can have that, like, how refreshing that dialogue even. Yeah. Does that even make sense, or am I just.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. It's definitely difficult, like we've said before, just to
Mm,
have a conversation in today's day because
mm.
human interaction is so minimal. But not only to have a conversation, but to have a conversation on something difficult and to
Such a
not
touchy subject.
yeah, and not necessarily like opposing um ideologies or whatever, but just simply the fact that it is something that needs to be discussed.
Yes.
And the fact that it's so it's so dangerous, and
Yes.
dangerous is a good word for it to discuss.
Yes.
We were saying how the pure fact of even post-op people just threatening and can't even have the conversation piece, or
Well,
it's so hidden in the
well,
fact of what they're
right.
doing now.
Well, I guess one of the important things, and you're so right there. You're hitting some nails on the head already out the gate. I freaking love it. But yeah, out the gate, it's like it's so important to touch on. Like, it's no secret that this ideology has been, like, statistically speaking, uh, one of the number one attributors as to why we're being led into the most suicidal generation ever, especially for the younglings. So
Yeah.
to like identify that and be like, wow, like really hone in on that and why as to why. And that kind of even goes back to what we even already covered is like, wow, is this really a road that is leading to individuals' happiness or more destructive, right? So it's
Right.
so important to like, and once again, I mean, now this is highlighting like hit this nail many times already on this platform where it's so, because it's like, it's just been so the war machine of mainstream media, because even as it stands now, man, I'm jumping around all over already, but bear with me. Hopefully I can make some sense of my crazy brain. But it's like this whole movement literally accounts like, last I listened to Charlie Kirk, and I value what they, being the experts in these regards, it's literally less than 2% of the world population. This whole trans and LGBTQ, and it's a slight minority of the world's population. But if you look at the commercial space, if you look at the talk shows in all these things on Netflix and Prime, and from shows to movies, it's why is it ending up, what is the percentage on that? Why is it ending up 80, like dominating all these things and social media platforms, news even, it's dominating. So the reality of it, is it's unproportionate. And why is that? And it actually kind of shows, wow, intentionally, strategically, evil in this world is staging these ideologies, these narratives, and adding all this polarization to create confusion, hatred amongst all of us.
Yeah.
And we need to set that down. We need to be able to have the communication. I mean, like, my gosh, that's why it's so important to say, look, I zero judgment, zero.
Yep.
And let's let the intention out, like, let it be known up front. Like,
Right.
let me know if it becomes hurtful. Let me know if it's this, because I don't want to have that impact.
Oh, I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, right. Well, and that goes to say for anyone that even challenges themselves into like diving into, and it shouldn't even be a challenge, but I guess it's just been so effectively polarized. No one wants to essentially dive into these things, because there have been threats. It's no secret
Yeah.
that these patriots, such as Charlie Kirk, Dan Bongino, well, even like Stu Peters, right? They have said, out of all the topics, all the against the grain topics and things that they've discussed, there's singularly been nothing more threatening to their life than having the conversations on this whole LGBTQ type talk.
Right.
And like, it's been so touchy, so polarized, that not just Charlie himself, his life has been threatened on multiple occasions, but his wife's, even his newborns. And that's
Mhm.
just where, guys, so let's step back. Why is it we can't, oh my gosh, why would you threaten an infant's life?
Right.
Like, that is
Over a conversation piece.
right.
Over
Just because
something that
a man's
is
beliefs, right?
right.
Like, it's
It's
been
it's
that weaponized. That's where it's like, that's
mhm.
where it bleeds into the arena. I feel mass psychosis only goes so far. controlling
Right.
these narratives, like the less than 2%, and giving them the mass unproportionately, stage, so to speak, on all these different, platforms. And it's not just that, it's actually in our education programs too. It's on our college campuses.
Even
Um,
on job applications now,
right.
there's a flip with it. Like,
Well, that's
granted, there's always
mm,
been the option to opt out to saying, but there
right.
was always been the two, male or female, or I don't want to tell you, you know what I mean? But now, even
Right.
on your name tag, you have pronouns.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're
Or
catering.
if you would be
Mm-hmm.
preferred to be called X, let me know.
Right. It's been a long time. It's been very strategically slow drip, like done, like even from our medical forms, where it used to be sex, male, female. That's
Right.
it. And now
Okay.
it catering to pronouns. It's catering to what sexual orientation you identify as. So, in a way, just allowing that discussion as to, well, I'm bi or trans, like that already stepped out of the confines of like reality, and we're already catering to a very destructive narrative, because the truth lies, biologically speaking, scientifically speaking, uh biblically speaking, that there's normal and there's abnormal. And I don't mean to say that in like an offensive way. That could be
Right.
obviously very triggering, but no, like it's sure there's not just outliers, sure, like we can, like I myself can acknowledge, like you're funny. Like you're like just the other day on when I don't know why I was just like I kept saying you
Right.
guys, and I was just like, well, I don't mean I want to include the ladies, like because it's not specifically guys in that, in my generation that phrase just applied to all in a very innocent, fun
Right.
way,
Right.
nothing nothing crazy about it. So yeah, and I'm sitting here, yeah, and I'm just
You know
whatever.
what's funny too is for my generation, it's
Hmm.
dude.
Mm.
I call everybody dude. I even use guys. Like
See, that's so
I'm
cool.
leaving
And you
work
should be able to do
today,
that without
speaking of
people taking
females.
offense.
I went, see you later, guys.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the point, say, someone's taking offense more than what you're saying, because you have the right to say whatever the frick you want to say. Period. And at the point
Right.
someone's taking offense, like the one being offended should actually look into themselves as to, why is this rubbing me wrong? Because they, like, you should be able to acknowledge, no, they have the right to say whatever it is they want to say. And if the point is hurting me, or why is that? And if
Right.
anything, if it does bother you enough, you should feel comfortable enough, like, hey, this bothers me. Let's actually dive into that. Do you mind? Because,
Sure.
like, in amongst any moment, they should be able to have that conversation with that other individual, is to like, why did that trigger me? Why do I feel, and together you might could even get to the bottom of that. And maybe that other individual will be like, you know what, yeah, I won't use that around you, not out of respect. But the other one will land on, no, you can use it like out of respect, that's fine. So
Right.
like it could be such an amazing, like, just compromise all around. But once again, things have been so effectively polarized and weaponized that, man, we just can't even have that dialogue anymore. It's
Right.
And that is so dangerous, downright dangerous. So kind of going back to, say, even those doctor forms, and touching on like normal and abnormal, because
Right.
the reality, I think that was just the beginning to the end of this endless, and the reality of it is it will never end, this type of division. So like, what is happening if we go back in time and we actually look, and why it's literally strategically being done to have a level of manipulation, to have us essentially at each other's throats, more so than focusing on the issues at hand currently and moving in the right direction futuristically, right? So,
Right.
is you really, I mean, there's so many different conversations to be had. My poor,
It was like quick.
what's that?
It just boom, boom, boom.
Right. Oh my gosh. So, it's interesting because essentially this has been preying like kind of wolves in sheep's clothing. It's been
Yeah.
preying, say, on is creating a weaker and weaker culture, weaker individuals. And let me try to explain in a way as I see it, because it's ruling out accountability, it's ruling out responsibility, it's ruling out like biblical truths and all these other things as well, all simultaneously, with just the thought of like, okay, uh, gender. I am identifying as this, or this. And oh, you're gonna have to help me out here because my poor brain, I hit so many snags. And do you know what? I just due to even like picking myself apart on these last couple, whatever you want to label them, rants, or things weighing on me and being passionate, whatnot. Like I am still in the midst of my healing. In fact, I got another IV treatment scheduled for today. So I'm still literally fighting these spiral keats that are having a negative, like cognitive effect in my brain. It's impacting
Right.
memory, speech. So please bear with me. I'm so sorry. Like I'm my own worst critic. And as I listen to this back, I mean, man, I feel for you guys too. But please give me some grace, cut me a little slack, because I'm truly still in the mend, and hopefully at some point I'll be able to get closer to 100% for the first time and see and feel what that actually looks like. I'm a little fearful with the head injuries that my 100% might more so land at 80 or 90 and there's just nothing to be done. But like that's where it's like, hey, doesn't mean like I could still be a good example for folks to, hey guys, wear helmet when you do these certain things, right?
Yeah.
Protect your brain. It's so important. But mine were freak accidents. I'm one of those specials that should have a helmet on 24/7, it seems. Like
No.
to avoid
I thought I was accident prone.
Yeah. Well, so much of it literally is tied into like my own doing and decisions and alcohol and my
Oh.
goodness. Yeah.
I
So,
know exactly what you mean.
mm,
I've had my fair share of brain cell damage too.
mm. Well, our bodies are very miraculous. And
Hmm.
I mean, just from where I was to where I am now I have my own testimony on the matter. And there's other people with the same thing. Like, so you feed it the right, that's where health's so important. So we could
Yeah.
become the best version of ourselves and give our bodies that proper nutrition and things to repair, to recover, to heal.
Right.
And
And honestly,
mhm,
on the note of that, just a proper foundation to start is
yes.
so necessary. And that's a big issue with um, child suicide,
Mm,
is the pure fact that a lot of these kids so young are confused just in the world that they live in, but not only that, with adults telling them, oh, yeah, you know your gender, and just like you said, does that 6-year old believe in Santa?
yeah, for those that haven't seen What is a Woman, I can't remember specifically what. You know what? We'll try to track it down and add it to the show notes at some point. So if you're having a
Hmm.
hard time finding it, like check back frequently, and at some point we will add that link of What is a Woman in the very comments. But this guy did a very fantastic job because he wasn't confrontational, and he essentially just kept asking scholars, doctors, very learned folk in our society, is to even I think some political folks, is to, hey, just this basic question. Can you please answer what is a woman? Like, explain it to me. None
Right.
of them were able to explain it without using the very term in their explanation. Well, a woman's basically a woman. What? That's
Right.
not an, what? That's not even, that's zero explaining. That's zero. That's a zero answer. That's not an answer, right? That's just
Right.
words. You just answered with words.
Yeah. You just rephrased my question in a
Exactly.
statement. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a statement, not an answer. So it's interesting. But yeah, to your point, my gosh, there's this very powerful moment that stuck like glue in my mind where, yeah, he was, I believe it was actually a doctor lady that, in fact, herself has performed mutilization surgical procedures on like 6 year olds, on children.
Yeah.
And he just out of the blue was like, let me ask you something. Do you believe, because this doctor essentially, this doctor was like a child knows their gender, like knows, and on behalf of that child, oh my gosh, so they're praying, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing, they're praying on like our hearts in a way like the child knows, and oh my gosh, do you want your child dead? Do you want your, is that what you're saying? You're not going to affirm it because the child knows and you want your child dead? Like,
Right.
that's where the doctor's coming from. It's like, wait a sec, whoa, 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 this is such a destructive like thinking, right? Thinking that, do you, let me ask you something. Do you believe in Santa Claus? And she's just like looks at him, of course not, right? And he's just like,
Right.
good, okay, great, because I don't either, right? We're adults, we know. It's just that's a fictional story.
Right.
However, does that child you perform surgery on believe in Santa Claus? And the sad truth is, yes, people, that child believes that Santa is real, that reindeer can fly, that he can fit down chimneys. And he's this fat fictional character, and he could do it all overnight. Every home across the world. The child genuinely believes that. Like, sit on that. Think about that. And this doctor, learned doctor, is telling this man um, that they know. I mean, wow, we put that ideology of Santa Claus and this and that in a beautiful light, right?
Right.
In this children's brain. They don't know anything. They're children.
Yeah.
So why in the heck are even like, that is leading along the lines and bordering along the lines of like pedophilia, the fact that this hypersexualization, these topics are even being discussed during the development of a child.
Child.
That is child abuse in and of itself. We're not to go there. We're to teach them everything about like sex at certain stages, appropriate stages, like okay, development and how, women's menstrual cycles, and then men and their NRBs. What is happening in my pants? There's appropriate stages to have these discussions, like okay, and like to
And
help.
speaking of stages,
Yeah.
it's just the pure fact that just taking the human body from such a young age, that body is not in any way, shape, or form developed. Their brain's not developed, their
Right.
bones aren't developed,
Right.
nothing of that child is developed. And not only that, you take on like the psychosis of the parents or even the doctors involved. What is their true motivation? It's like, is that doctor really truly caring about the kid and helping the kid and taking that
Nope.
kid's life? Not just what's happening now, but where they're going to grow and how they're going to develop.
Yeah.
It just in their brain, not only just
Mm-hmm.
physically, and then not only that, taking the actual hormones that they naturally produce and then completely flipping it
Yeah.
again at
Well, that kind of
thinking
gets
about this.
back to what is feeding more so this suicidal uh, culture that's growing and then in a way that we've never experienced before. And it's no
Right.
secret that this is like the number one attributor with our younglings. So it's like this is so based on that and those stats, it's so dangerous and it's crazy. Of course, this war machine of information, they're saying they're preying on people's heartstrings along the lines like, well, do you want your child dead? as if these are the two options, and there it is absolutely false. There's more options, and it is more loving, it is more affirming, it's reassuring, it's a more solid foundation for these individuals, like historically speaking, when things were more based out of biblical truths, or more, things were more based out of like even scientific biological like facts and the differences between. And yes, there's 100% differences on a cellular level between male and female, and
Yeah.
that's why it's so like it's no secret to me, and I'm no brainiac. Are you freaking kidding me? like why you pump these children full of the other sexes like hormones as to the damage that actually ends up happening with the not just the development and the unreversible effects that co- come from like lupron. Like lupron, have you even looked into that? Like lupron, in fact, it was demonized. Like we can't even use that in like psych wards or prisons and things to that nature. To oh, I can't remember, but yet we're now allowing that with children, and in some states we're even ruling out parents say over their own children, as though like, oh, this is now even becoming a grave threat. And the fact it's alive and well in some states right now, the fact people are like, it's not in my state and it's not going to come, if we don't speak up, it will come to your state. Like,
Yeah.
or in fact, like some of these children are even being like expedited and like like just all sorts of crazy, where if a child wants to do this or that, if and like the parents don't have the right to even know in some of these states, or it would be literally legally potential liable, like a penalty for the parents as child abuse, that they're not affirming their child's,
Wow.
like it's so bad, it's so destructive.
I
And
didn't even realize that there were states where
mm,
it was illegal, or to not allow your child. That is my child. Are you kidding
hundred
me?
percent
If
it's
Okay, so
lit
if my
mm-hmm.
kid goes and murders somebody as a minor, I still have to deal with the repercussions because
Wow.
they are a minor,
Look at
right? If it's
yes.
and that's with any law, if my kid goes out and breaks the mailbox, I gotta pay for the mailbox.
Look at you using analogies that are based in reality and truth and fighting back on a narrative. 100%. Yes. Yes. All that. Mm-hmm. Doesn't yeah. Doesn't that make sense? Doesn't that bring light to it? It is 100% happening, where even through the schools, if a
Mhm.
child speaks out on this or that, like they're enacting like all these programs and special things to help that child affirm, and like affirming, and what are they calling it, like a whole medical type of, yeah, but they're literally trying to go about it in a way that isn't informing the parent, keeping it like
Mhm.
secretive, that the parent doesn't have the right to know. They don't have the right, and it's so
Mhm.
twisted on some of these levels, to where yes, 100%, if the parent doesn't in fact affirm, and like it could be like ruled as child abuse in and of itself and have legal ramifications. That's the
Right, but if
direction.
you were to take it to the opposite
That's
spectrum,
right.
right, and say, oh, well, I allowed my child to do so. This child grows up, absolutely hates it, which is a
Yeah.
consistent thing that's happening is after they've gotten
Yes, you're bringing up a
their
very good point.
right.
Yes.
It's like, okay, well, if at that point, right, that child grows up and decides to say, you know what, this was abuse to me as a child because
Yes.
I was
That.
a child, I
Mhm.
didn't know better. My
Yes.
parents were the ones who were convincing me that this was good. And then again, that circles back to even the idea that the parent could just be doing it because it's a movement right now.
Mhm.
Like mothers making their kids sick on purpose because they like the hospital, they like the attention of their child being sick. and
Yeah.
yet they're purposefully harming their child, they're purposefully making them sick and poisoning them. This is something that's been known. So to think that, oh, it's a
Well,
big movement.
that's not making it on that stage. That massive stage that is praising this very destructive ideology. None. They're not giving a peep to the detransitioners, the ones that are speaking out, that are coming out, that have been sexually mutilated, whether it be through surgical means or um, pharmaceutical means, psychological means, but they come out on the tail end basically because they ended up at such a low place that they were about to be part of the statistic, the detransitioner of a suicide. They were literally on death's door, and my heart goes out to them. My gosh. And that's why we got to stop this destructive, like, and have the conversations, like, stop it in the way that we can figure out and hone in as to A, how we're being manipulated, B, like, we're led to believe, like, oh, this road versus this, all this confusion. Let's clear the smoke, let's step back, let's see the bigger picture, right? But yeah, in that moment, so they literally are knocking on death's door, and versus ending their life, they just vulnerable, open, like, okay, maybe I made a mistake, maybe this and that. Let's get off the testosterone for a biological woman that had been led to believe she's a man, right? Let's get off these hormones that are messing the chemical makeup of my brain and all these things. So they do that, they start doing other things, and lo and behold, they start getting life breathed back into them again. They start they start seeing everything for what it is. But one of the saddest realizations at this point, and talk about real abuse, real traumas that they're now living. I can't even effectively put on those detransitioner shoes and even begin to realize on a personal level, like, that moment for them. That's got to be so tough, even potentially 100% even greater than the challenges I've even faced. But then again, all of our, it's not a competition. All of our individual challenges are in fact entirely valid and legit, like, challenge, right? But just trying to walk a minute in those shoes or a mile or what have you, it's like, it's
just to empathize.
Yeah, the extreme sadness that hits me, that, wow, the realization that so many of these kids, like, obviously surgically, good luck, right? Like, they're not going to be able to really do anything coming back and have those, sexual parts function, or, like, the ramifications with the breasts, or, I mean, we don't need to, I guess, really go into the graphics on your own, but even the effects of, like, the clinical side of things with Lupron and what have you, it's literally sterilizing women. It's sterilizing these individuals to where they can no longer naturally produce offspring, have children of their own, that beautiful gift in this life. And that's where, wow, is this all just a movement? Is it all just kind of an effect of a movement, or in fact, if we step back even further and dissect this further, is this in fact intended consequences, strategically coordinated for a Depop, for for like this focus? I mean, so many, like this power structure of good versus evil, right? And man, if I could squirrel for a moment, because this is pretty deep stuff, and if you don't mind, I would like to finish a point that I did get lost on yesterday's, whatever you want to label it, podcast.
Go for it.
Thank you.
I'm gonna let my dog outside real quick.
Okay. Well, folks that are listening, as I talked about the open border, there was a moment of, oh my gosh, just I got off side notes. I got off track of the notes I had, but it was a very profound point I wanted to make regarding the open border and how a particular issue also plays into that. And I jumped into how they're pushing this narrative of, oh, Charmaine, are you there? What is the word? Reparations?
I don't know.
I think it's reparations. So they're trying to push this narrative on heartstrings from people from generations ago for like reparations for slavery and things like that. Like how ludicrous. How ludicrous. Like wow. You are you are discrediting and completely spitting and all the people's lives that were shed, the blood that was shed for winning that Civil War, even to end slavery. End it. End it. And now we're diving back in it so deeply. It's evil's intended. They have an intention here. And it's once again just like what we're touching on, just a different topic, is to the division and creating confusion and having each other basically kill each other off while they're able to focus and move the needle in a whole nother direction where they're literally hurting us like freaking livestock.
Yeah, I was
Like,
gonna say they're hurting us like cattle.
it's so crazy. So because the connection I wanted to make here regarding the border, if slavery was such an issue generations ago, like, and it's crazy. Let's make an observation here, shall we? Like in our personal lives, if a specific experience and trauma in our past, we are so stuck on it to where we can't effectively move past it. Guys, we're no longer living in the present. We're no longer focusing on the future. That's why it's so toxic, even on a personal level, if we can't effectively move past the freaking past, right?
Yep.
So here they are strategically. This is proof, indisputable proof that they're strategically weaponizing information, topics, preying on people's heartstrings to have us stuck in the past. Why? Squirrel, look over here. Don't live in the present. Don't focus on your future. Be divisive. Focus on each other. Let's focus on pigmentation. Let's focus on race. Like, that is racism in and of itself. And it's going to perpetuate the very issues. My gosh. It's sickening how effective this war machine has become. Because the truth with this border, in a quick little even comparison, even though comparison isn't that important, because it's more important to focus on the present issues than do comparison. But even in a comparison, slavery is more alive and well right here, right now, in this country than ever historically speaking. So why would we be focusing, going back in time, on a lesser issue than current? It's by design, okay? There are humans, not just adults, but children, being sold from the cartels and there's all sorts of connections, and there's so many connections, and it is all over the world. But right here in our own turf, and having this border is allowing the biggest push on slavery and human trafficking and child sex trafficking, and it's got to stop. But anyway, that was a point I wanted to make also regarding that border yesterday, where I kind of lost my train of thought, and thank you, Charmaine, for allowing me to share it today, because I believe it only adds to stepping out of, for a moment, this whole gender crazy circus, but these roads are paralleled. It's the same. Yeah. It's just a different topic, but once again, it's showing, and there's nothing.
Well,
okay, go ahead.
In a way, sorry.
No, you're great.
In a way, they kind of intermingled a little bit, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. Because of the whole, when LGBTQ came out, pedophiles and stuff were trying to say that they identified as a 14-year-old and
Yes.
that would be okay. And then,
Yes.
and from there, it has just amplified, and now there's this whole, you can't even talk badly about it or even converse about it in any way, shape, or form without being demonized. And me being, in that realm of where I was part of that community, I was part of the LGBTQ or whatever, and even then I was still seeing like, okay, look, I see the point of, okay, you love who you love, but there is still a limit.
Right.
And if you really truly love this child, or even as a doctor, if you really actually cared about the well-being of this child throughout their life into adulthood, you would really truly take things into consideration. Like,
you would wait till their
child,
development, like you were so eloquently putting, you would wait till they're developed as an adult, because we can all agree we don't understand things. I mean, once again, we believe in Santa Claus. We don't understand things. So why in, oh my gosh, God's green earth, would we essentially allow a freaking child to make an irreversible decision? Like, there's a reason why we have an age limit for cigarettes. There's a reason why we have an age limit for alcohol. There's a reason why we have an age limit for driving. There's a reason for all these things, because like it's a structured and on our behalf, like society and on an individual. It is actually based out of love. So in fact, it is more loving to, hey, hold the phone. If you think you're a girl, like, or you think you're a boy when you're the opposite sex, like, let's just, that shouldn't even be a topic for these children. They should be focused on playground and learning the ABCs, and all.
At 6, your
Yes.
main concern should be my teeth falling out and I get a quarter from the tooth fairy.
Yes. Yes. Well, so you started moving the needle there awesomely. And man, I need to come up with better analogies. But oh boy, don't have a James moment. I'm having a James. I'm having a James moment. Here we go, folks. We should have a name for this. Or something. Like just some.
You need a sound for it on your little.
I know. That poor. I'll break that. I know. I'll break that button in no time. It's just a show constantly hitting that button. Oh, it's nice to laugh amongst this crazy talk here. But I mean, the reality of it is, like, man, is there a better discussion to have? I mean, it's on behalf of our little ones. Okay, so you were touching on the development, how important that is.
Hormones, how they're not really grown, or at that. Oh. How a child shouldn't even be spoken to about those things.
100%.
That is like your youth, your childhood. I think back like to when I was a kid. Granted, like, in my youth, I really had like homelessness or whatever, and like just crazy stuff in my own family. That wasn't even a passing thought. But even as a child, there were things that I could identify. Like, I'm too young to know what this is.
Right.
And just because we're in such a confusing time, and not only in the media it's praised in a sense. Like you said, people don't, when they do detransition, or when something does go awry after the fact, it's so thrown under the rug that even I didn't even know about a majority of the things that you mentioned. And I was like, I like that child.
To hear some of these people personally, like whether it be on the Stu Peters or Charlie Kirk, where they literally interview these individuals, and these individuals are championing this narrative. I mean, there's a reason, obviously, why they're not given that stage on that other end of the spectrum, but these patriots are, and they're out of love of their hearts. It goes to show truly who's really loving, right? And it's just so wild. I mean, I can't even
who's going to help me in my delusions, but who's going to help me when I'm low and build me up and help me grow.
But if you haven't heard some of those detransitioners and their personal stories, my gosh, I would love to get some of them even on this podcast. Like, their stories, it'd be hard to be here and not weep. Like, even reflecting back on some of the stories I've heard, my goodness. It's literally the root of evil, and it's strategically being done, and it goes against everything like basic human biology. It goes against biblical doctrine. It goes against, you know, like reality. I mean, a woman and a woman, sorry, naturally cannot reproduce. A man and a man naturally cannot reproduce. Cannot. Cannot be done. Sorry. Sorry to
It's
break
like
that
he's
news to
saying
you.
the human race would only last like a generation, or
We are
I'm
all.
botching it.
Yeah, that's why Elon Musk, it's very interesting. I don't agree necessarily with him on everything. And it's so interesting. Elon, I'm too small. This probably won't come across him for years, but who knows? Who knows? Whatever. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe later today. Never know. Come on. Come on.
Right.
Like, that's why we got to share this stuff. We need to reach Elon. No. So many of these people. But it's so cool because I don't agree with him a lot, but obviously we all could agree he's a pretty brilliant mind, right? And what he's touched on, statistically speaking, given, wow, people aren't getting married till way later now. Wow, we're actually having less offspring. But one humbling truth is that we're all one generation away from extinction. Extinction. Entire the whole human species from extinction. If in fact, say, we all just decided, let's team up with the same sex today. Guys,
Yeah.
there won't be any more births, and the human species will be gone within this current generation. Like, so he actually touches on in a very pretty genius way in some of his conversations where more so than a overpopulation issue by the stats and things he's come across,
Right.
we actually are more so threatened on the other end of the spectrum, that on a depopulation issue or a populate how do you even word it, you'll have to find that stuff and listen to it. But I find it fascinating. But there's other patriots and things that actually touch on it, I think, even better than he did. But
Yeah.
that's where it's just so beautiful. Like, guys, let's dive into this, and we don't need to be doom and gloom. We need to have the conversations and be like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Why do you feel that? And just really have these discussions. And that's
Yeah.
why, man, you, especially with your experience and kind of dabbling and going there and maybe even currently still there, uh, to really hone in as to, well, why is this? Because the reality of it is, wow, you can kind of see the truth with the statements. Even there isn't all these other things. In fact, saying any of these other things is catering to the very destructive, like like downward spiral, never ending downward spiral that's leading to all these, we could agree, toxic, destructive things. So we get back to, okay, normal and abnormal, right?
Right.
And okay, so what is it that, on an individual level, like, what is it? Because we can acknowledge, we can go down not even rabbit holes. I think the rabbit holes are more so the sick destructive ideology of all those topics, because they're limited. You're stuck in a rabbit hole. You only have like a
Yeah.
limited view. Like so it's more so standing on the ground in the wide open and just absorbing everything you can hear, taste, smell, touch, and absorb, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually, you're living in the present. You're absorbing what you can. But like, so normal, abnormal, and normal. So at the point you step outside of abnormal, it's like you should ask yourself. You should be like, okay, why is it I feel this way? Because now in a way I'm going against like societal norm. It should be societal norms, and it should be, viewed as uh outside of biblical norms and basic human biology, right? And is it just my own sexual desire? Is it potentially, and I wouldn't even, for lack of better words, like have someone even like try to self-talk, because it could be damaging to an extent of being like, what's wrong with me type of thing. But,
Right.
but
Can I, random note?
yes.
I don't remember who, I was having this discussion with somebody else,
Oh,
and
okay.
where I think it was way back when, where I was contemplating telling my parents, because I think
Mm.
I told my mom maybe a few months ago, and my
Okay.
dad still doesn't know,
Interesting.
but
Okay.
just having the discussion of, somebody who was relatively close to my age, but I still saw like a authority figure in, so to speak, or somebody just to look up to and ask advice from. And I asked her, I was like, well, what if your daughter came up to you and asked or told you that she was gay or bi or whatever? And then she said, I wouldn't really be concerned with it, but I would definitely look for somebody. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And she said, there's a statistic that a lot of people who are on that kind of spectrum in their youth were sexually assaulted.
Mm. Right.
And regardless of if it were a male or a female or what have you, just the pure fact that at such a young age they were exposed to such an explicit situation or sexual
Mm.
context, and then it kind of parallels with what are we doing to these young kids' minds, and that could
Yes.
be in its own way, shape, or form a
Wow.
sexual assault or a child abuse. It's just because we are stealing their innocence away by
Wow.
simply telling them about the topic. It's like telling a kid, oh, yeah, one day you're going to die, and then not understanding why they're scared of death every single day or why
Right.
they look for death every single day.
Wow. What a wise observation, wise words
Mm-hmm.
um, to plug
And
in
and it,
there.
it
Yes.
sucked to hear that in the
Right.
moment because it shattered my world, because at one point in
Wow.
my childhood I was sexually assaulted.
Oh
So
my
then
gosh, I'm
it
so
made
sorry.
me think, like, again, I still have traumas that I'm going through and I'm dealing with, and they're so deeply rooted in my
Right.
childhood, that I still don't understand them. So just the pure sense of that, and then being a child and not understanding what was happening, and then, as a child doing something with another child and then being disciplined for it when it was done to me, and then not
Wow.
understanding that, and then to
Oh
kind of
my
go down the
goodness.
life further,
Right.
and then again where I was self-abused forms, and then dating, one of those forms,
Mm.
and then it's like, okay, that is still an underlying trauma that
Right.
I, in my own case, have to deal with, and I have to acknowledge, and I have to analyze, work through, whatever. But then it allowed me to look at every other person that I had in my personal group that were in the LGBTQ, and then, if I were close with them, I'd ask them if they were comfortable, if that had ever happened to them in their childhood or in any way, shape, or form. And a majority of them, if not all, again, this is my own personal circle,
Yes.
told me that in one way, shape, or form in their youth by somebody,
My
they were
goodness.
exposed. And
Wow.
it just amplified it for me, like, wow, something that I was necessarily born with, because that was my belief. I was like, I've always found women attractive, but just so you said, you can appreciate another human's
Right.
beauty,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But and then it was like, well, am I mistaking what I see as just a pretty person
Wow.
for some form of sexual lust? Because I've been taught lustful things since my childhood, and
Right.
not to extend it further, but even my parents had experienced some form of sexual abuse in their
Mm.
childhoods. But with their generation, it's so much more taboo,
Right. Right.
and now it's just been so widely accepted
Well,
that, like, my dad is completely confused
well,
by
it,
anybody who's gay or,
right.
any of the I'm an animal or
Well, I think it's
one,
pretty
none of that.
easily argued as you go down as to why all this is being pushed. Why? Not just
Mm-hmm.
strategically to create division and all this amongst the ranks, but to
Mm-hmm.
in fact, I think the end goal line, and I can say it with confidence because the research I have personally done. I feel convicted that in fact evil is trying to move the needle so far and the goalpost so far to where they're normalizing pedophilia.
Yeah.
They want to normalize it because they themselves are partaking. And if the
Mhm.
world actually knew with the child sex trafficking, if they actually, there's nowhere they could hide. Everyone involved, right? So if they normalize it, in a way, they're gonna get a world they want to like live in, which is sheer evil. I mean, you yourself, like, we those are all discussions, and it's so important that we really dissect to bring light is to how, like, not just why this is so destructive, like, to address things from all different angles, but also have the big picture as to why I even believe they're trying to actually move it, like normalize it,
Right.
and
Right. What is
actually
the real
connect all
mission?
those dots. But I do want to take a minute, Charmaine, and I literally have my hand over my heart here, and I'm so sorry to hear. Like, it pains me, not just for you to hear personally what you've gone through, but all those other individuals
Yeah.
that are a part of that whole LGBTQ, what have you. Like, I mean, it's hard to even say that, but I mean the LGBTQ, because I want to kind of even, because once again, normal and abnormal. But I say that with the utmost respect. So, abnormal literally is part, like LGBTQ is part of that.
Yeah.
All this, the pronoun side of thing is part of that. To get back into the realm of like reality and having these discussions, and I still have my hand over my heart because like my heart goes out to all those scarred and with the traumas that, like, I think you really honed in on something personal that has genuinely led to people believing and acting out in their own lives this
Yeah.
very destructive narrative in and of itself. That's where, under the guise of good, of hey, live and let live, and oh my
Yeah.
gosh, don't feel guilty. And that's why these people become so convicted, and it's so touchy because, in a way, they don't, it's normalizing what happened to them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it's not viewed in their eyes anymore as like a trauma, so they're not having to face the inner challenges in a healthy light
Yeah.
to their betterment. They're more so just able to sweep it under the rug, and oh, it's just normalized. And now what happened to them scarred them in a way to where they're acting out in their real life to no accountability, no responsibility, because that's another way I feel all this circus has even been playing out the way it has, in a way. And I say all these things with the most love I can, but it's just a circus, like, because it's getting out of the confines of, like, it's abnormal, and
Yeah.
it's destructive, and it's to the detriment of like all these individuals involved. But anyway, it's literally having us because we all want, we how did I word it? We were like, it's essentially giving people that pedestal to just middle finger to all of those around you. Just middle finger. You want to judge me? Please go ahead. Tell me. Tell me what I can't do. Tell me how I shouldn't live. Tell me, because I'm just here standing on this pedestal with this middle finger, right? Just
Right.
like, versus in a way that's a destructive thing. That's not a loving thing to do, right? And the most impacted individual is the one standing there posting the middle finger, like, hey, like, this is, because essentially it's self-destructive. It's not moving the needle in the right direction to where they're actually healing from things, and they're more so out without having responsibility, accountability, and this whole rebellious kind of ideology. Well, I mean, I'm one of those naturally, whereas, like, oh, someone wants to tell me what to do, or I just naturally want to go like that other way. And that's the
Right.
thing. I don't want to come from a place, by no means am I like, I believe in freedom, I believe in free agency, and that is the most important thing. But there's a fine line where yes, you have the freedom to live your life. You have the freedom to choose whatever it is you want to choose. Say whatever it is you want to say. But
Yeah.
by no means are we going to reconstruct society due to fictional or delusional beliefs. Period.
Right.
Because
Right.
there are only two sexes, man and woman. Okay? And
Right.
and it takes a man and a woman to create life. And anything outside of that in relations and just it's just it's on the fringe, you know? Um
Yeah.
and I say like the true intent is because there's with the circus there's just all this fog and smoke and confusion and polarizations to where we can't effectively communicate anymore. But the reality of it is like there's all these different roads from here like people can go. And
Yeah.
and my intent is trying to clear the fog to where we could see things more effectively so you can more effectively choose the road that truly leads to your individual happiness, peace,
Right.
like the best version of you. That's what we want. 100%. That's the intent. And I mean, so with that being said, statistically speaking, it's proven this road of these ideologies has led to the most destructive culture, like movement ever, where it's having the most suicidal impact ever
Mm-hmm.
versus
And
this. So how are these individuals staying like in this false truth, but it's a truth to them, right? But it's without a foundation. So, but because they're not seeing and really like the big picture of it all and how it's having this crazy impact. So it's essentially just pedestaling middle finger, not having responsibility, not having accountability, basically living out not just their past traumas, but their personal sexual desires.
yeah.
And, biblically, I would say life walking in sin, but not from a sin. Like, I don't want to view that. I want to do disclaimers in that regard because the sin, like, I'm a sinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's make that freaking clear because
Yeah.
I don't want to be as if
You're
it's
not immune.
like
Yeah.
I don't have like frick a pedestal. I'm right down there with you, okay?
Yeah.
Anyone. So let's just make that clear. Let's absorb that. Let's actually validate. Let's like that. That's the truth of it. So I'm not coming from a place of like damnation or anything, which may or may not be. I believe to be a true thing, but because that's a whole design in my eyes is the everything here. But everyone's got to figure that out for themselves, and I wouldn't. I'm. I don't want to force my even to potentially the betterment of these individuals. It's their choice, right?
Right.
So zero threat on forcing my beliefs, my thoughts. Everyone should have the opportunity and the chance by this design. That's a beautiful design of this life, to have that free agency to go
Yeah.
and choose. My heart just goes out because the intent truly is like, man, I just want people to not be manipulated, to have the conversations, do the deep dives, address the scars within, really, stop even these generational curses, so to speak, as you've already eloquently like kind of acknowledged, and
Yeah.
choose for themselves what truly is gonna allow them to have that peace and happiness. Because it's
Mm-hmm.
no secret that lust is one of the seven deadly sins. So
Mm-hmm.
in a way, that path, in a way, it's just living out a life of lust.
Yeah.
It's literally living out your sexual desires. And we all could obviously agree, those that know and experienced orgasm, it's a gift, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful thing. But if you solely, and this is where it could be deadly, a beautiful thing could be literally spiritually lead to spiritual death, even physical death, right? It
Mm-hmm.
can. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Connect that dot for us, James. Well, maybe we'll try. But there's a more important thing to grasp here, where my gosh, I could see how at the point someone solely, even let's say you're normal and you're living out a lustful path and wow, you're just seeking the
Yeah.
next orgasm. And I'm sorry for those that, oh my gosh, like this is maybe too graphic, but no, this is real talk. This is important to grasp in a sense in and of itself.
Mhm.
But for those that are seeking that next orgasm, you could see how the lines eventually for that individual will become blurred because the reality of it is if whether this is a man or a woman
Mhm.
seeking normal orgasm from the opposite sex, eventually the line will be blurred. What does it matter whether I
Yeah.
go to the opposite sex or the same sex? We could all together achieve that blissful orgasm together. So, oh, cool. Let's all just do that. And where it leads into this very destructive ideology and like leading to a society because the orgasm in and of itself is not fulfilling. It's not meaningful.
Right.
It's empty at the end of it. Like it's empty, right? And I've as a man, a normal one, have lived out that in my own light, and I
Right.
reflect back and it's empty. That's where I'm
Yeah.
seeking. And for me, the biblical truths resonate more because it's like, man, I'm not married. I don't have children. And it's just like there's so I'm figuring even seeking that intentionally and doing these deep dives. It's been solely the greatest blessing for me individually. I can't even effectively put into words, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that is essentially where I'm like, man, if we can through these talks have a level of resonating with people, to clicking on that light bulb, to oh, I'm gonna look into things more like that. That is beautiful, and it's not. I don't need you to do this. Okay, I'm enjoying the road I'm on personally myself,
Right.
and I'm so addressing Charmaine like the audience in a lot of what I'm saying here, even more so. Than you. I'm so sorry. But I mean it to everyone. Like I don't need you because it's interesting. A lot of people are like, "Why are you trying to convert me?" Or it's I'm not. I'm
Right.
not. I do
It's
not
not.
need that. Like the alcoholic me would have needed. I needed that validation. I needed everyone around. Oh, come on, bro, have another beer. Come on, all on me. Because I needed that because like I couldn't have faith behind that. I needed reassurance to essentially live in sin even with that drink, but because for me, like I was the way I was drinking was sinful. Not that alcohol in and of itself, I mean, that could be argued, right? But
Right.
not to get too
Right.
down that rabbit hole, like it could have a positive effect. Just by drinking alcohol doesn't mean you're a freaking sinner, right?
Right.
It can have a time and a place, I believe. I mean, even in the Bible, it talks about wine and this. And here I go down that rabbit hole. Okay, stop. But
Just a little bit. But yes.
it's like I don't need that validation, right? I'm
Mhm.
peaceful and I'm happy with where I'm at. The intent once again to and why I'm like on fire to sharing and this and that because I see how destructive it is to others, and I see how it leads to destructive roads. I see how it's leading to all the suicide. I see, and ultimately, man, if this can resonate and kind of have clear the fog enough to where people look within themselves and are able to address maybe those child traumas and able essentially to lead them on a path that leads them to more happiness and whatnot. That's what I'm seeking.
Right.
The intent essentially is just for people to have a better life.
Right. Be
Whatever
happy. Be at
whatever that may be.
peace.
Whatever
Right.
that may be.
Right. It's just saddening how just as a society as a whole is it's just so allowing of such a crazy shift, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And just talking about how doctors are saying a child understands and how
Ugh.
even when that child grows up, them speaking out on it and saying, you know what, no, I didn't understand and my parents did this or whatever, whatever. And them being just so minimally exposed. in that fact, and that like, oh
Mm.
no, this is the narrative we're going with already. You can't. We only accepted you when you were changing and transitioning or whatever, but now that you're turning back on it, we don't want to hear you.
Wow.
You know?
Right. Right. They get that platform all through that, but as soon as it goes against the grain as to what they're trying to do, it's like their life matters and their story matters when they're in sync with that agenda, but all of a sudden their life doesn't matter when they go against the grain of that agenda.
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself is telling that that is root from the root of it all evil. It's evil because they in fact it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That wow, how clear is it right there? To me, that just made it just boom convicted within myself.
Yeah.
Right there, you grasp, you pretty much captured it all.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Is this, do you feel conversation helping like bring light to like where you're at and how you've pretty much been living? What would you even call that? Like,
Yes and no. I would say yes, but I've had this conversation years ago where
really?
it already put me in that light of, oh, maybe I do need to address some childhood traumas, or,
Mm,
maybe I do need to look inward. And it's definitely been a contemplation of mine of already of, I don't, the just the pure confusion, I guess, is the basic way to explain it, is this is what my truth was for as long as I can remember. And now, with added information and added research and just deep diving and self healing and going through all of my other traumas and, just continuously growing, it's
right. But you,
it's changed already so much that it's like
yeah,
I'm already so confused, and
yeah.
that's why I've had to just personally just be like, you know what, I'm not dating anybody.
Ooh, right.
Where
Well, does this in a way, so it's like I see how you could be like, yeah, it's helpful and it's not helpful because it's helpful in ways because it seems like you're hmm I can't speak for you, but that's where I'm curious. Does it feel like does it having this talk, does it seem, is it raising flags? Is it feel
yeah,
alarming that wow, I believe in a, I can see how in a huge way I've been manipulated.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and mostly for me personally, it would be, I guess the best way to explain it would be in my walk of sin, where I was at one point, because like you, I've had my own sins. I did my drinking, I've did my lustfulness, and my anger's gotten the best of me at times, and it does it, whether you believe in sin or not, or whether you're just like, that's
Well,
a character
see,
flaw.
that's just the thing.
It's
Even as you said sin, I'm
mhm
like, I'm like, that's an amazing topic to even, because I think that there's a very negative view on sin and sinners, and I
mhm
think a lot of that ineffectively has been pushed through churches and
mhm.
religions and even Christianity
But
and
those were corrupted churches and
because
religions.
because
Like their
ulti-
motives were.
the way I view sin now is
Mhm.
pretty much anything in this life you can't do full heartedly.
Mm.
Sin is essentially, in my eyes, anything you cannot do full heartedly.
Can you elaborate on that?
So I want to even, I love using analogies, and sometimes the most basic of analogies can have the most profound effect because you can really like absorb. Like I
Mhm.
guess just for me to lash out. So I could be correct. Let's just say I could be 100% correct on any topic. Like we just have a disagreement real quick, but
Right.
I know factually I would win in a court of law. Like I would win on any given topic in a court of law. At the point, say, even if I don't necessarily, I mean, we could make it simple and just say I raised my voice in my side of the argument.
Mhm.
It doesn't even matter now as to the topic. It doesn't even matter the intent. It doesn't even matter as to me winning or being factually correct. I am
Mhm.
walking in sin, and I can't. There's a stain to the very conversation now on my end that is my doing, where it all that other stuff doesn't even matter. Yeah, James, you could have won in a court of law. Like you won, or even you won the argument. Like
Right.
it was sinful because I can't even do that full heartedly because at the end of it, like I raised my voice. I lost my cool. I
Right.
spewed maybe like a level of evil or hatred or anger or like that was sin. But the thing
Right.
to me, right? So anything you can't do full heartedly because I I humanly stepped in it. I stepped in that dog crap. It stinks and I'm tainted to a degree. But then again, not tainted in a negative light. There's
Right.
we're perfectly all imperfect, right? And
Yeah.
we we should seek the opportunities to refine and become better, and that'll be a forever work, I know, for me on every single aspect of life, and beautifully so. That's where it's like we
Yeah.
just need to be woo excited about it. um
Right.
so
It's one of the things that's always guaranteed.
so versus yes, versus as Christianity and these other churches like put this negative connotation attached to sin and a type of like damnation. Now, yes,
Yeah.
biblically that could reign true. However, at the point say that's having a negative effect, we need to take that connotation or whatever that attachment away from the word sin.
Yeah.
Cuz for me it had more negative impact in my walk here than positive impact. So
Yeah.
sin, for lack of better words, for me, the way I'm viewing it now is, so the fact I couldn't do it full heartedly means that was to my own detriment. By sinning in any magnitude to any level is to my detriment. I stepped in it. Now I'm tainted. Like I'm walking around with the smell. It's weighing
Yeah.
on my soul. It's weighing on my conscience. We've become too prideful, too egotistical to even acknowledge within ourselves because it doesn't matter. Like, oh, we self-justify. I won. I won. I won in the court. Woohoo! I won.
Right.
Like, and we don't even acknowledge the sin and it weighs on us. And
Yeah.
if we can't effectively acknowledge that, so it's to our own detriment versus a level of damnation. It's like, guys, it's lowering our frequency, it's
Yeah.
lowering our vibration, and now on our impact, like in our future, like by that conversation, even if I like, okay, birthday, woohoo, and like it celebrating that, there's a weight to participating in sin before and not addressing it and letting it go and letting it effectively go would be going to the person in this analogy I raised my voice to and apologizing, seeking
Yeah.
forgiveness, right?
Right.
And letting that go. Like, I'm so sorry. I lost my cool. My goodness. And now it lets it go. Now my vibration comes back up. In fact, we now can, in fact, it could be a strengthening bonding moment where
Exactly.
now, okay, now I'm actually so on fire for it. I'm at that birthday party and in a positive environment that you think it's swept under the rug when you didn't address it, but when you address it, now it's like you're in this and you're glowing, you know? And we have this, so it's essentially that wolf inside of us, like, what do you feed? What are you paying it?
Oh, I love that.
What are you paying attention to?
Mhm.
What's going to win internally? And
Yep.
it's all easier said than done. That's why it's
Yep.
so important that we organize our toolboxes. We acknowledge things for what they are. We don't get caught up in the smoke and mirrors and the fluff and all that. like and properly communicate on all these topics, not let evil, not let these polarizations keep us from even having these conversations, ending up
Yeah.
triggered, like just that other example the other day, where it just highlights how effective it's been, to where we can't, oh, you're anti-LGBT. It's just like, wait, let's just go back to the the basics on things. We're so lost specifically down these rabbit holes that we
Yeah.
just don't even know our way out anymore. We're lost.
Yeah.
And let's get back up in the open, fresh air where we can breathe, where we're not constantly running around in the fight or flight with, you know, dead ends and just all these scary things.
Mhm. Just in a constant battle of different evils, honestly. Because when you are that stuck and that
Yeah,
lost and in such a fog, like
right.
you said, you seek out bad people in bad situations, or you seek your own demise in a sense
So,
because you're lost.
Charmaine, I think you're on a beautiful path. Okay. I think the more you can personally do the deep dives, acknowledge A, that this has been weaponized, B, the intentionally like orchestrated wise, to where you can, wow, be like, okay, if I'm on this, say, and with all due respect, like on the abnormal side of things, like why?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I think you hit the nail on the head on some, because you even correlated so much of that group having those childhood traumas and things of that nature too.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
And granted, not
yes,
every single one is in that sense, but
right.
it
Oh
could
yeah.
be just a different
It could have just
type of
been
trauma.
it could have just been the
It could have been.
manipulation, or
Mm-hmm.
like the environment in a childhood influence, right?
Right.
It could have been
It,
all sorts of
it,
things, or just wanting to pedestal on this movement because it's trending right now.
mm-hmm. Exactly. You just took the words right out of my mouth. It
Ugh,
could have just been a parent just,
well,
oh, well, if you think you are, that's okay. Just let us know,
right,
and that could be that parent trying to be open with their child or whatever because of their own
right,
childhood traumas and their parents denying them for something that they were just curious about or just didn't understand about
right,
themselves hormonally, physically, whatever, right?
yeah,
Emotionally, even. And because they felt that their parents weren't there or weren't
right,
trusting or caring or whatever, now they want to overcompensate with their child, but without realizing that because you're trying to do this so much younger,
mm,
you know, that you are now planting the seed in their head. So if you feel you're
yes,
saying, oh, there's a possibility,
a
and let
toxic
me
seed that
explore that
doesn't belong
possibility.
there.
And then that leads that child through a whole thought process that they would have never even had. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe they would have just because of how, like you said, how trending it is and how it is in society. But then as a parent, if your child comes up to you and says, hey, mom or dad or, whatever, I think I'm gay. Okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's explore
Yes,
these feelings. What is going on? What made you think you're gay? Oh, because
right.
this kid in my class has really pretty hair and he's a boy. Oh, well, why do you think it's pretty? What is pretty about it? What do you think pretty is? It's
Mm,
really understanding what that child's thought
giving,
process is because even their
yes,
vocabulary, they might not even have the proper words to describe what they're saying and only have heard it once or twice and got
right.
a broad stroke explanation as to what it is because you think a teacher is going to explain to one of their students, especially in such a sensitive subject, what being gay is. And not only that, there are teachers who are doing that in the school system, and parents are rioting because they don't want their children to be exposed to this at such an age. Like, no, do not be teaching my kids this.
Oh my
And in
gosh.
that same caliber,
Right.
everybody has their free will in a sense, and you know,
Wow. Powerful. I love it. So it's interesting, like stepping back again. Like it's just
mm-hmm,
like all like we could just talk to this at nauseum, and I mean it's, but it's, is there better topics to even touch on, right? Because it's it's leading fact to the most suicidal
mm-hmm,
culture we've ever experienced, and it's directly correlated to it. So it's very
mm-hmm,
destructive. So once again, it's like, hey guys, like, where it's having this type of impact. Let's have that conversation. And what a beautiful concept that in a parenting analogy that the parents spend the time. They validate like this child. They give them. I mean, even Jesus when he was on, he touched on like how it leads to faulty wiring and people not developing the skills to even having communications when a child's like, well, why, and I'm like, he asked me and I epically failed. He's like, what's your typical like response, like a parent? And I'm like, go
Right. Because I
outside,
said so.
go outside. And he's like, no, because I said so. Yeah, that right then
Right.
there in and of itself versus giving that child like the time and actually sitting down. Now I do understand at certain development ages, like because I have nieces and nephews and I can see, and you sit down with them and they can't grasp what they can grasp. But to take the time and be like, you know what? I think you're a little too young to understand that, but I'm so excited. Thank you for bringing it up. You are so smart. I think I think you deserve an ice cream, but I'm so excited to touch on this in the future. Like when you can like absorb, like, you say it in a way they can absorb it, right? And
Right.
then go ahead and you can actually treat them for being vulnerable, for trying to figure out something, and you validate it,
Right.
and now it's creating a whole different type of like wiring to where they develop the skills as you give that patience and that time to that developing mind, futuristically speaking, to do what we're doing here effectively.
Mhm. Just
That's
talk about it comfortably. It also gives them, like, my parents used to tell me all the time, I'll tell you when you're older. You know,
really
yeah. I used to hear that all the time. You'll figure it out when you're older. I'll tell you when you're older. The
that's a
downfall
little
to that
better
was,
than cause I
it's a,
said so, but
the downfall to it is every time I
it
got older
became, yeah,
and
it
I was in that
became the
life stage, the
go-to.
developmental stage, they never actually
Right.
explained it to me. So
Right.
especially when it came to a lot of sexual things, like my
Oh man.
book, I got straight just whatever you learned in like school.
Yes.
That was my experience
Me
of it.
too.
So when it came to me
No.
understanding exactly what was going on with my body, teenagers so frisky, you know?
No.
And because it was so taboo in my house, I had to become sneaky and hide it, and
Mm.
I had to experiment in my own ways. And not only that, when
Right.
I did hit a snag or
Oh.
something dangerous, you know, put myself in a situation where I genuinely was scared for my life, I
Oh
couldn't
wow.
even tell my parents about it, you know? And
Right. Right.
finding out was worse than the actual situation I was in. Even though now looking back, I'm like, I could have died,
Oh
could
my
have
gosh.
literally died, been murdered. And there were many a times where, again, I was 14, 15. I was going to raves. I was
Mm.
doing drugs and I was drinking. I started smoking. You know, I started, dabbling in sex in both sexes. You know,
Yeah.
and because every time I was in a curious situation or whatever, and I had to hide it from my parents, and I had to just figure it out on my own. That now as an adult, it's like, oh wow, I
That's
really see
so
the damage that it did.
sad that to even hear I had to, because I'm sure even your parents at this point or your mother might hear that and be it could pain her in a way because it's like, oh yeah. But the reality of it is like that is posing an opportunity for her to come to a realization of, wow, I'm not perfect, right? Give
Right?
myself some grace, but acknowledge what her child is in fact saying, that
Yeah.
I didn't become effective enough on the relational side of things for my child to feel comfortable coming to me. Because I mean, you can now see as an adult, she did, in fact, on these topics know better. She could have, in fact, spread some light that could have obviously kept you from these very dangerous situations, but humanly, on the relation side of things, there was an impact and things that had happened that kind of severed that bridge on you feeling comfortable addressing that with her. You felt like maybe to an extent, I mean, I could say it kind of assumingly because it's like a lot of the things you said even resonated with me on personal levels where it's just like I felt like there'd be levels of judgment, maybe even lead to punishment by
Mhm.
me even going to communicate with them.
Mhm.
That's where there's a fine balance on being a parent, educating, telling them what to do and not at certain ages, but
Mhm.
above all realizing and on an individual basis with your children, realizing like it doesn't matter like I could do my best to tell my child not to touch that stove, right?
Right.
But some children just are going to have to learn the hard way. And that's a sad truth of life where I can't helicopter parent. I can do my best. But above all, that's where I think parents could do really good by their children. And it's so much easier said than done. Like I could sit here
Yeah.
and say it, and then I know I have one potentially like of my own futuristically, and just like next thing you know, I'm that helicopter parent. So it's so much easier said than done. But to
Right.
individualize the parenting and it changes and ebb and flows throughout the development stage to where above all I find it most important that it's not becoming like their friend because at the end of the day you're their parent and you're helping
Right.
coach them along their like development stages which definitely it's important to be that parent, right, to save their
Yeah.
own lives and grab them and freaking when a car's coming and they were about to run across the street for that soccer ball,
Yeah.
but you can as a parent ensure the proper development throughout the stages is with that child on having a healthy relationship where
Mhm.
they feel comfortable confiding in you for all you know. And it's on an individual basis to even achieve that. So to be aware, to be cognizant, to humble yourself as a parent constantly is to trying to challenge yourself to uniquely be there, right? So
Yeah.
that pains me to hear that. And I mean,
Well,
you got to give
it
your mom some
just.
grace too,
I
right?
was gonna say,
You didn't
hold
come with
on,
an
because
owner's manual.
right, that in and of itself, but
Yes.
just for both of my parents, my mom was 16 when she had my older sister. She was like 18
Wow.
going on 19 when she had
That's
me,
young. Oh my gosh.
and she's a single mom. We were in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's not a good city,
Right.
and like I said, my mom was already dealing with her own traumas and her own life and having kids at such a young age. And that circles back to the development of the mind and how even at 18, 19, you're still not fully developed. 21, you're still not fully developed. A lot of people don't grow into the person that they are for the rest of their life until maybe late 20s, or if not later.
Mm.
There's still so much more life changes that happens. Life experience
Right.
happens and changes you.
Right.
But and just to speak on that, for my mom, like to see the difference of her having me and my older sister and how our childhood was, and then to my other siblings, my little brother, my half brother and half sister, they're barely hitting high school now, and my
Mm.
sister is in a very, very good relationship, and she's what, a freshman, and
Mm.
her boyfriend are interested in going to church and seeking out God. And
Wow.
my sister went from we grew up Catholic, so she's got all of that in her, but she's like, what, I just want to explore Christianity. And the fact that
Wow.
she feels comfortable talking to my mom about religion. Like with me and my mom, with
Mm.
religion, we were screaming at each other, arguing, and
Right.
and and to the point of, like, obviously I can have these conversations now and not scream at her, and I've talked to my mom about this stuff now, and we kind of
Yeah.
laugh at it, but the
That's
back
awesome.
in that time, we weren't screaming at each other about the actual subject. We were screaming at each other because there was something else in our lives that we were mad about. She
Mm.
was dealing with abuses in one way, and in turn kind of turning it on me, and I was dealing with abuses, and we both were lashing out at each other because we were the only people that we had, and that in and of itself is just is a change, because now
Yes.
obviously I love my mom, and we've talked about this, and we've moved and we've grown, and my mother has even grown into the woman that she really is,
Wow.
and is just complete 180,
Wow.
and is always tells me that she's constantly trying to be the best her that she can be, and we're both working through our traumas with just each other of our
That's
arguments and
oof.
how mean we've been to each other, and then
Wow.
we both can look at my little sister now and be like, wow, what a difference compared to me and my older sister in high school and what we were doing, and even compared to my mom when she was a youth and what she was doing. Just the progress of not only me, but her and my stepdad just really truly looking inward. And honestly, my stepdad even found God, and he was one of the most atheist persons I've ever met,
Wow.
you know?
Wow.
So that was astounding for me to see. And, I actually got to be a part of their wedding where they got married in the Catholic Church under the eyes of God.
Wow.
And that alone was so monumental just because my mother's marriage and our relationship and all that has been so difficult, and just so much anger and fear and resentment, and now to be at a point where we're actually growing and loving and thriving together, and it's awesome, but at the same time it is very, very difficult.
I mean, obviously, it's like if we could go back in time and change everything, and save you some of the pain, and I that would be so awesome, but we can't, right? It is
Right.
what it is. And what sounds like you guys are at an awesome place. It's still got its challenges because there's a lot to work through, but what a beautiful story to hear all of that. And oh my gosh, I'm just so excited to hear where you're at, and that you guys can now kind of address these things and work through things even together. Like, what a blessing that even is, right?
Yes.
Because imagine if it just wasn't like, nope, and it was just continued. That would just obviously like perpetuate. And it it got to points even with me when it came to, and it was even more so for me and things I was facing, that I even needed to establish like healthy boundaries with family and certain individuals in my life to ensure like my own sanity and make it through a chapter, and
Mhm.
but to get back to kind of, yeah, the more healthy and like healing and being able to potentially walk through that together and whatnot. Like, it's just to reprogram those traumas and get on the same page and let the intentions out entirely, and own up to responsibility on all ends, to
Mhm.
where, because the reality of these life experiences could be like, wow, well, this is why I don't trust these individuals, or why I don't want to be around them as much, because it drags me down, because these past experiences, what have you. So if in fact they do, more so than saying I love you, more so than, if they actually do to this day, like that parent in that situation with the child, if both parties are able to, in their adulthoods, to set down their weapons and actually like go there and go deep and not put up their walls, and let their intentions, more so than just projecting them like I love, with the I love you, genuinely showing up and fulfilling the I love you with, my intent was to help. And I do see where my patience was tested. I do see where I could have done better, right? That could just move the needle in the way of, to where you achieve all this healing from the past, um, which leads to now being like, wow, I can more so trust in this person now. I can more so, I like being around them because we've ironed some things out and enjoy these things. So what a beautiful place to
Yeah.
be And it sounds like even with, say, some religious scars too, you're giving it a fair shake, and you're diving into, word on the street is diving in time. And I'm just excited to see where, because it's a personal journey, right? I'm just
Right.
excited to see where it leads you. And when you're intentional and you're seeking answers, like that's where beautiful things happen, right? And I'm excited because just the world needs the best version of you, and you are doing. You're there, and it's only going to get better, and that's so exciting.
We're
You
making strides. I'm trying. But it is, like you said, it is
well,
really beautiful that I think at least, that we were able to, like you said, put our weapons down
you
and sit
yeah,
down and talk it out. And like you said, there are still things that we're both working through,
yes,
and I've traumatized my mother in my own way,
right.
equally as she has me, and as a teenager, you hear teenagers tell their parents they hate them all the time, you know, but when I was telling my mother this,
Yeah.
it was the realest thing in my life, and the way that I went about it, I was so awful to my mother
Mm.
for so long. And again, that there's no excuse, but there was a reasoning behind it, and
It's a two-way street, 100%.
exactly.
And the reality of it is, I'm sorry, my heart really kind of does more so go out to a child because they're in the development stage more so. So the responsibility in my eyes more so does lie on the parent. Period.
Yeah.
Period. Like
But the
they
parent
know
was a
better.
child.
What's that?
I said, but the parent was a child.
Yeah. Well,
In
the
a
fact of the
weird,
matter
weird
is, in
way.
those situations, they do have more life experience than the child. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
So there's been more refinement. There's been more all the things. But yeah, in your mom's situation, obviously very very young to be parenting, and with that naturally gonna just not have as much experience. So it just is a testament, and does show. So it's amazing. It is important to have a level of grace in this and that too, but in fact, I'm fearing that we might be nearing on a two-part series. So I'm thinking we will close this up here shortly. But I had
Yeah.
a oh, what was the point? Oh no, I had a point. James moment. Um.
Your heart goes out to the child. The parent has more experience, life experience.
So this is what I want to touch on, because we all wish we had that crystal ball, right? And to
Mm-hmm.
go back in time. But I'm telling you, there's a way without that crystal ball, you could gain all that time back. And you know how you achieve that?
Oh.
And I can say this from personal experience, through a level of selflessness. Let me explain.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not broken, and you're mending and you're healing, and it will make you stronger. 100%. And I'm so excited for the world to see that version of you. Just continue down the path you're on. You're doing fantastic. It's amazing. And your story can resonate and help others, uh, like broken families, or it could help parents. It could help the younglings, going through the midst of it all.
Yeah.
That in such a way, I'm telling you, you can live vicariously through countless others by doing what you're doing and sharing your story and living it out in a selfless nature. I'm telling you, this will bless you in such a way. Yes, in this existence, and yes, in the afterlife. In such a way, you didn't just gain all those hardships in that time back. It'll pay back 100-fold. Just try to meditate on that. Journal on that. Maybe even
Yeah.
ask God about that. Did James speak truth on this? Because I'm telling you, I went from being in the midst of my own toxicity, my own pain, and everything to the point it was just I was hanging by a string, and it was just perpetuating like for so long, and then getting on the healing side, and there was just a brief moment where it was like, oh my gosh, I wish I was here X amount ago, right? This
Yeah.
stole my life. This stole my life. But once I continued and I continued, it actually already seemingly overnight, I can look back and be grateful for all of it. Grateful for
Oh, yeah.
all those hardships. And it's
Mhm.
through helping others, I feel as though all that time was beyond worth it. Well spent. I'm getting all that time back by impacting one freaking life.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. It does. I would hope, just like you said, just even the smallest of somebody just not feeling alone in a
Mm,
situation, or
right.
somebody being like, oh my gosh, somebody has almost the same situation as me. It's almost like when you had Priscilla on, and she was talking about her past relationship and
Mm,
how it was so damaging. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been there. I know exactly what you're feeling. I know exactly what you're going through. If you need somebody, talk to me. And if I could even do that for somebody, or like I said, just make them feel less alone in this
yes.
world,
And you
that
can.
is moving worlds for me.
Mm,
But um, I am just grateful for the changes that me and my family have gone through, and how we went from such a
mm,
destructive, hateful time to now living and thriving in our family love. And it's weird. It is so weird for me to say that, because I have been the biggest enemy for my family, in a sense of I've just never wanted any part of it.
you
You know?
were in pain. You didn't know. You were crying out through your pain for help. Yeah, that was it, maybe in a very damaging way. But oh, look at where you were and where you already are and what you can acknowledge. That is to be praised. And what you just said was so beautiful. You don't know on my end because you can't hear it, but I kicked off kind of the soundtrack, and it
Mhm.
was so beautiful. As you were talking to hear with the soundtrack, it was just like, I don't know, the power of music in a way is to how it just can magnify things. I don't know. We're just these energy beings to an extent, and like literally, music is sense of energy and vibrating. And anyway, um, it's you will have an impact. People, listeners, did you hear all that? Let's champion this amazing woman. Let's support her on her journey. Wow, the vulnerability, the strength, the wisdom, all the things. Charmaine, you are stronger than you know. And I know we've kind of said it on a personal basis before, but you are the only unique, like, you're the only you that
Yeah.
ever has been, ever will be. You are beyond worthy. That phrase doesn't even give it justice. You are beautiful. And what you've shared, it's like I can see your heart. You're on a great trajectory. And I'm just so excited. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm so excited to have you on again here soon. You are going to
Yeah.
bless lives. I know it. I know it.
It is. It's in the works. You just gotta keep working.
I love you. I love you. I
Love
do.
you too.
You're an amazing person. Any challenges or last words, anything like that for our listeners? I think you did pretty good. You're good.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Practice patience.
Yeah. Patience, grace, all that, 100%. One step at a time. There's always additional tool out there just sitting there getting dust and dirt and rust that could help us. Let's seek out those tools, take these steps, have these conversations, look inwardly. Let's stop pointing the finger and look inwardly as to, because we can more so solve our own issues. Like 100%. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Love you. Can't wait to dive more into these topics even deeper, because we need to get more organized. So this is just still tip of the iceberg. Look forward to talking soon.